There's no number 10. There's no number 5. Those two numbers are available.
The camera angles were different. So it was a much better game. I could read the plays better. I could see things before they started taking place.
This is my team now. This is what you do. But she handled it at such a good rate. She knew it was a long season, so she didn't implement everything at once. She slowly put in.
I'm sorry, I'm old school. If you can get away with it, get away with it. Go for it.
Welcome into episode 2 of Straight from the Pitch. I'm your host, Anna Witte, joined as always by my co-host, Scotty Schweitzer. Matchday 1 of MLS has wrapped up. And before we get into all of the excitement, I want to state that I think I was right about predicting the best game of the weekend. I know your game didn't happen, but my game happened with St. Louis getting their first ever win over Austin. I was wrong. I thought Austin could potentially get the win. But they didn't. I thought it was cool that St. Louis came back from a 2-1 deficit, getting 3 goals in their inaugural season game. But to rewind a little bit, we've discussed and we've heard a lot of people discuss that second goal against St. Louis. The Austin FC defender had the ball. Jared Stroud, the attacker for St. Louis, was behind the ball. He got injured, knocked down in the 18. The Austin FC defender turned around, passed him the ball. Jared Stroud turned around, shot, scored. St. Louis went up 2-1. There's a lot of conversation around how Stroud may have been calling for the ball. It shouldn't have been allowed because that's not a rule. Scotty, if you were the referee, would you have allowed that goal? And how would you even start from the fact that Keller passed it to the wrong person?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unfold in that. First and foremost, it's just a terrible play by Kip Keller. I mean, let's just be honest. It's just, you got to know. You have to know your surroundings. You got to know what's going on. Stroud gets knocked down. The ball goes into the midfield. It comes back out of the midfield. Then it gets wide out to Keller. So, time has elapsed. There's a lot has gone on. And even if he's calling for it, I understand that that's by the letter of the law. It's illegal to call for the ball if you're another team, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry. I'm old school. If you can get away with it, get away with it. Go for it. I mean, that player has to know that you cannot play that ball back. He had to check his shoulder. He had to look around. He had to be aware of his surroundings. And then you get the ball. I mean, we could get into all kinds of conspiracy theories. Kip Keller was at St. Louis. He played for the Billikens in St. Louis. He was part of that franchise. Then he gets traded. I don't know. Was he match fixing? Just kidding. But there's a lot that went into that play. Stroud also was at Austin. Now he's at St. Louis. There's just the dynamic of all that happened was a little bit crazy. For me, he's got to have a better play on that ball, Kip Keller. That solely comes down to his mistake, his error, and eventually cost him the game.
There's a lot of factors that went into the game. It was the first game. Keller isn't a consistent starter for this Austin team. So as human, I'm sure he was nervous, trying to make sure he's making the right decisions. But Scotty, you're a youth coach. I played for you when we were younger. The one thing I still remember when I'm 28 now is you always check your shoulders. You always know what's around you to make the next right decision. And something as simple as hearing someone call for the ball, you can't trust that instinct. I know that Stroud played for Austin. Keller and Stroud are friends. I don't know if they're friends anymore, but yeah, you can't make that pass unless you know for a fact that the person's wearing a green jersey. So I kind of disagree, though, with the rule. I think that it's kind of soft, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think the game has gotten soft.
Well, yeah, the game has gotten soft for sure. And I think
like you said about the youth game, I think a lot of plays over the whole weekend, we can see where there's a lot of lacking in the coaching at the youth level. Yeah, he wasn't a normal starter, but you have to be ready to play. This is what you wanted to do. You wanted to become a professional soccer player. You don't know when injuries are going to happen, who's going to get in, what the coach's reasoning for you to be in the lineup is. You have to be ready at all times to play. As we watch the games, and I understand early days, first weekend, the good thing is every game so far has had a goal. There was no 0-0 ties. You want to bring fans in, we need goals. There was a lot of goals scored in these games. Now, be it some of the goals, the Keller goal, the last goal, Kip Keller slides across. He's got an angle. Sure, Zhao's going to get a shot off. He's going to be able to get a shot. Klaus is going to get a shot. But there's a good angle. The goalie has the near post. You cover the back post. He lets him cut back inside. He gives him all the room to the goal. He has both sides of the goal. Little outside of his foot, slick little shot. Goal ends the game. Kept him on sides too. There's a lot of things that were happening in these weekend games where we can see I can't necessarily blame a head coach at a professional level. It's not his job to teach a player something he should have learned when he was 10 years old. There was a lot of space in midfields against teams. It was easy to break lines. The Charlotte goal, overhit the ball. I mean, I was told that when I was 11 years old. When you're making a long ball, overhit it. He tries to chip it in perfectly. It gets stolen. They get a counterattack off of a corner kick. Bam, bam, goal, game's over. 69,000 people have to go home sad.
That was such a tight game, too. I thought Charlotte really dominated the first half, but allowed New England back in. It's just they allowed them to kind of get comfortable. Charlotte got comfortable. They sat on their heels, and that's how that transition goal happened. Back to St. Louis, though, because they are going to be playing Charlotte in St. Louis, their hometown. Scotty, you've mentioned how St. Louis kind of is the birthplace in America in some ways of soccer. It's a gritty town. There's going to be a massive block party on Friday for these fans to come out. But you mentioned the concession stand, Scotty, and how St. Louis is going to be the only team that has food that is local to St. Louis. How does that affect match day?
Man, I think St. Louis is doing it right. We know that their logo, they took years to come up with their logo, which is a shout out to the arches and the metal that's in the arches. They have in the inside of their neckline, it says, "Our city, our home." They are really taking St. Louis and making it the staple of what their team is about. And I think that is a wonderful thing. And especially when you watch that game, this is a high-pressing team who needs to work. And they know right now in the beginning, since we're a brand new group, we have to have good defensive structure and a lot of effort. And if we do that, good things will come to us. We can say that they won based off of luck and some mistakes. But when you work as hard as St. Louis worked in that game, you start to create your own luck. And I think that is a wonderful foundation to set your first game on. And now you're getting to play Charlotte, which who would have thought the second game of the season for Charlotte would be so important? Because everyone I thought was going to, that Charlotte game was going to be, New England wasn't good on the road last year. I don't think they made a lot of good enough changes to be anything different than they were last year. We'll see. They got their first win on the road. But Charlotte, 69,000 people. Listen, that's great, 69,000 people. But you got to play a better game to keep 69,000 people coming back. And I thought they played off the energy early in the game, and then they dwindled out and fizzed out by the end of the game. And that's where New England took that game from them. Their own kind of, she is taking this league and showing us what a new team needs to do. Embrace your city. Embrace your city. Embrace your fans. It is not just for those players out there. These players have to embrace this city and play for them. And if they do that and they continue to do that, I think this house is going to be rocking this weekend.
St. Louis kind of embodied that grittiness too. And I think soccer stateside isn't all technical. We mentioned the fundamentals aren't always there. So those opportunities in transition to be athletic and get those goals maybe favor St. Louis. And we may see them in the playoffs this year. Who knows? It's a very long season. Heading back into the numbers, Charlotte was 69,000 fans, just over that number. Atlanta had just over 67,000 fans. Why has Charlotte been able to have the best attendance in season 2 for a team?
Well, it's a massive soccer environment here. You have Raleigh, which is not too hard to get to. It's an easy drive. Charlotte's right on the border of South Carolina. They have their own soccer fan base. So I think just all these people coming together, and North Carolina loves North Carolina sports. Like we will support our sports. And being that it's in Charlotte, you don't have to mess with the colleges down here in the Triangle. So I think it's one team we can really all come and gather around and be a part of. I am not a Charlotte Panthers fan, but their fan base is massive here. They're massive here. I mean, and they stink.
Yeah, I was going to say,
showing up for those games.
Last season, the Panthers had 71,000 fans turn up, and they finished 7-10. They weren't even over 500. So it just shows that North Carolina, South Carolina has huge sports fans and people who want to see a great product. They just want to be entertained. And I think that's something that when I was growing up in North Carolina, we didn't really have that. The Panthers were never really good. Plus, I'm a Steelers fan, so we didn't really go to Panthers games specifically. But I think it's huge for Charlotte. I think it's huge for the South, showing that Atlanta has those numbers as well. And obviously it's February. Weather maybe up in Canada isn't as great as it is in the Carolinas right now, but better numbers than 13 NFL teams this past season. So I think that's huge for MLS.
You just hit on something I think a lot of these players need to understand, and young players. You want to be entertained. We as fans want to be entertained. So just going to a game, and let's say Austin won that game 2-1. I'm leaving as an Austin fan a little disappointed. What we should is a brand new team. We should have played much better. Now, granted, I always get his name wrong. DeRossi, what a goal. What a goal. I mean, that touch coming out of the air, then he reestablishes his footwork and gets it in like that. I want to be entertained when I go to a game. So, Charlotte, you got 69,000. You don't just have to win, you have to entertain us. And I think that's a huge part that we miss in soccer sometimes. I know at the youth level, my big problem is, and I think that's part of what we're seeing a little bit in the game, is we're being taught it's not about wins and losses, it's about development. That's a load of malarkey. It is about wins and losses. It is. I'm developing to have a winning mentality as a player. So like in that game, in the games we watch, it's like, oh, I'll get it on the next play. I was always taught you play every game at a time, and one play can cost us the game. So the pressure that you have to develop in practice and trainings to know that every time I'm in a play, involved in a play, whether I'm covering defender, whether I'm on the ball, this could cost us the game. And I don't think players play like that anymore. It's like, oh, we'll get them next time. Oh, we'll get them this. No, this season could be over. The season could be over in your first game if we throw it away. We don't know the mentality in the locker room. Are we disgusted? We are up 2-1. Now we've lost. I mean, I blame a lot of the soccer on the youth game, the way we coach, and parents at that too. I mean, how many of these players have been making teams because mom and dad are writing emails or calling? I mean, we can't hide from the fact we have Reina and Berhalter going through it right now with the national team. Right. We know it happened at the 17s. My daughter went through it at the youth level just last year, and that's not helping the game grow, and it's not helping players grow.
That's why they have the soccer mom stigma. Everyone kind of makes fun of it, but it's not funny because it's not helping young people grow and become adults. We all have to make mistakes. We've said that before, but you also have to learn, be able to have conversations with your coaches, genuine conversations as well. And you also mentioned the team camaraderie in the locker room is huge. And I think that's something that you talk about national teams too. You need the best players. You need the players who can score goals, who are really good at the game. But you also need the players who are great leaders, who are selfless, who want this game and they want to see other people be successful. They might not be the best soccer player ever. They may never be Messi, but they are good and they are hard workers. And I think those pieces are important to a locker room. I think sometimes that gets missed in teams. And if an MLS team wants to be successful this year, they need all of those pieces to be successful. So,
and I think St. Louis is a team that's going to need those pieces.
Right.
This is a team that's brand new to each other, and their style of play is going to wear players out. If you're going to press and you're going to play high, and a lot of the games this weekend, the first 15 minutes of almost every game, I was like, what am I watching? This is so fast, so intense, so great. But, you're playing off of your adrenaline, your energy, the crowd's energy, and games little by little dwindled down. And they were still fast-paced because that's the product we put on the field. We have big, strong athletes. And I'm not an old, disgruntled soccer player who thinks our time was way better than this time. These players are more physical, faster, bigger, stronger, and more technical. The problem is they don't know the nuances of the game as good. And I think that this weekend showed where most of the European Latin players are big money players in the MLS. Those boys showed up and played. They showed up. Klaus gets his goal. DeRossi gets his goal. I mean, there were some good players that really showed up and played really good. I watched the Portland game, and let me tell you, if Diego Chara can keep going, Portland can keep being a threat in this league. That guy just controls the midfield, controls the tempo of the game, and allows Portland to always be in the game, no matter who Savarese throws out there. And I'm a Savarese fan. I grew up with him. Played against him a lot. That guy, his intensity on the sideline, that's a coach I want to play for. That is a coach I want to be around.
Charlotte, I thought about this being my favorite thing. So last year in Charlotte's inaugural season, during the national anthem, the microphone went out and the whole stadium erupted and sang the national anthem. wasn't supposed to happen on purpose, but it became a tradition. It happened again this year. The microphone went out after the first 5-10 words and the whole stadium sang. And it was so cool to see these players, not knowing this was going to happen back in 2022, singing the song, the fans singing the song, being like, not that this is a political show or anything at all. I love our country and I love the national anthem and I love seeing people support that. And it was so cool to see 70,000 fans singing the national anthem, getting into the game and being excited for the start of soccer in Charlotte. So seeing it again this past weekend in Charlotte just warmed my heart. I was like, I was Nick Sirianni on the sidelines during the Super Bowl, tears streaming down my face.
I when I was playing, we played Toronto Lynx, who now becomes the Toronto FC in the MLS when they switched out of the league that I played in. But their microphone went out. The American anthem got played. The Canadian anthem, it went out. And the Canadians sang the Canadian. It was one of the coolest experiences I've ever been a part of. And I thought to myself at the time, man, I wonder if this could happen in an American arena. Would they know the words? Would they know the good? Our singers mess up and they're there to sing. They're supposed to have been rehearsed. So I thought so too. I think that is so cool when the fans take part in something so special to the meaning of a game, to the meaning of our country. I agree. And to be a part of it, granted, it was for the Canadian team, but I thought it was one of the coolest experiences I've had as a soccer player on the field, where the fans just like, no problem, we'll take care of it from here. And I know Toronto played very good that night against us. They lost, but they played a little bit better than they normally had against us. We had their number at the time, but I agree. I think that's one of the coolest things when the fans sing the song.
Let's get into the Apple TV deal. Next 10 years, we will be watching MLS on Apple TV. We had MLS 360, which showed us kind of a wraparound of every game on Saturday. Then there was a pregame show, there was a postgame show, and obviously the matches. I thought from a production standpoint, the matches looked really good. You could hear the ball bouncing off players' feet. You could hear the coaches on the sidelines. You definitely could hear the fans. I thought just the picture in general looked really good. And I thought the broadcast overall sounded good. The studio that the 360 people were in was beautiful as well. So I think overall, like audio wise and the way the game looked really good. And I think it's a good start for Apple. What do you think, Scotty?
I thought as far as the production, the game seemed, and I don't know, I've been saying it for years, where we film soccer in America is the wrong angle. Like they need to take note from the European games. It's a higher up angle. You can see more of the field. You can see the play develop. I turned on the games this weekend and I'm like, I don't know if my house is bugged or something, but the camera angles were different. So it was a much better game. I could read the plays better. I could see things before they started taking place, where the mistakes could come from if they were able to see it. Could get that ball there. So I enjoyed that. My only thing was, maybe it's because I'm so excited for the league to start and to get into it. I thought there could have been more excitement, more hype, give us a little bit more energy. I thought there could have been more energy from the broadcasting crews. That's just me personally, because the games were, as far as the energy in the fans, was amazing. I watched that Nashville game. I'm a huge Johnny Cash fan. They wore those sweet black uniforms. I thought that was the best game of the weekend overall, as far as good soccer, mistakes recoveries. I thought it was just the best brand of soccer of the weekend. I thought some of the other games, like I said, early days, a lot of little mistakes that need to be tidied up and cleaned up. But that game was like, I wanted to go to Nashville, eat one of those hot chickens and get into that game. I was excited for it. It was like there needed to be more hype from the commentators. I felt like give us a little bit more. The game on Monday, the Portland game, we get Max Bretos. Listen, the league is 25 years old. I got that we're a younger league than other leagues, but we're not a baby league anymore. Stop giving us excuses for not being as good as these other leagues. We have players, we have the quality, we have the fan bases. Let's not sugarcoat things. There was a play in that game where a guy went to cross it and he mishit it and went right to the goalie. And he said, "Oh, it looked like he was trying to catch the goalie out." No, he mishit it. It's a bad play. Like, call it like it is. Stop sugarcoating everything. We can understand it. There's a lot of good fans. The more intelligent the fan is, the better the players will become. That is the truth. No one's fooling around over in England thinking these guys don't know what they're talking about in the stands. They know if it's a good game or bad game. They want to see a good product. Let's not say, oh, I saw what he was trying to do there. He dribbled out of bounds. He was trying to do nothing. It was just a terrible touch. Like, I think our commentators need to be a little bit harder on these players. These players are making good money. They're doing good things. They have man, that's a great life. My favorite part of my life before my family was playing soccer every day. That wasn't even a job. I got to wake up and go play soccer. That's what they're doing. So give us everything you got. And when you make mistakes, own up to them and get better at it.
It's okay to be critical at this level, especially the top level stateside. It's okay to say it doesn't mean he's a bad player. It doesn't mean he's having a bad game. He made a mistake. Tell us why. Tell us what he should have done differently. Tell us what you saw and maybe ask your analyst, what would you have done differently? I agree. I will say on the Nashville game, I did watch the Fox Sports broadcast. I love John Strong. His enthusiasm for the game, I think very much shines through. And I love when he did this during the World Cup, and I was kind of curious if he'd do it in MLS, but he's like, 45 minutes in, 45 minutes to go. Like, he just sounds so happy to be there. And that's what you want. You want these commentators to be like, this is the best thing. We've got $1 billion deal with Apple TV. Like, let's go.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
I think overall it was good. I think everyone did a really good job. Obviously, there's room to grow, and people admitted that. But I think it's great for soccer in the States, and we'll see from a production level what continues to say. You touched on it, though, before we move on, just being able to see like the game develop when you watch the game from like a bigger angle. Calling games remote, I agree. Sometimes you don't see the buildup of a game. One time I missed a Marta goal. It was like the first time calling NWSL, and you couldn't see it. She shot it from like halfway down the field. And I was like, oh, I have no idea what happened.
My biggest problem going to a game sometimes is the fans around me, because they're so one-sided. And even if I'm there cheering for a team, if I'm there cheering for the Courage, or really if a Portland's in town, because that Portland Thorns are my team in the NWSL. They always have been. I love Portland. I love the fan base. I love the city. But if they're there and I'm watching, I'm a fan that if my team's playing bad, I have to call them out. I can't just want every call and everything to go my team's way. I want a good brand of soccer. I want to win a game because we deserve to win a game. But usually I try to find seats on the goal lines, because you can just see the play develop way, way better than sometimes sitting central. Sometimes sitting central is really hard. When I coached the pro team here in North Carolina, we had assistant coaches only because I like to yell at the referees. So I like to be on the sidelines, but I can't see angles real good from the sidelines. So we had coaches sitting high up in the press box, and they would radio down, and I'd say, am I wrong, or is there a 10-yard gap on the outside on the other side? And they would be like, it's not as big as you think. It's 7, or it's, oh no, it ain't 10, it's 20. And like, why are we not exploiting that? So I understand, like, when I watch it as a fan, I like to almost be looking down on it so I can see the whole play develop, and have camera angles close enough, or different cameras, that if a wonderful play or a skill, then go to that camera second and show me it in the replay. But as the game is being played, I want to see how things are transpiring, how the defense is shifting, how the offense are making different runs. Is there a third man run coming somewhere? Where the gaps are, where the spaces are. And I thought this weekend was way better to be able to analyze the game watching it. And I'll tell you this, though, if I was a player, I'd be very excited. I mean, I was in offices looking for VHS tapes just to watch games. To be able to study each game and each team every weekend as a player, what a gift to be able to. There should be no mistakes halfway through the year. These guys should know each other's games so well just because they can scout so easily.
It's easier than almost any other league. It's easier than NFL or NBA, because you go to one place. You go to Apple TV. You can see the match preview. You can see the post game. You can see the game. You can see the highlights. It's all in one spot, and you don't have to search everywhere for it. So it's almost easier than any league ever. But to play kind of devil's advocate in some way, like, there is definitely a push and pull of, you want to see the whole picture of the game, but you also want to get a little bit closer up so fans can see what Walker Zimmerman looks like, and kind of get to know these players in some way. So we'll see how that continues to play out. I'll ask you, because you mentioned where you like to sit on a field. For our fans that are listening that are going to go to MLS, NWSL games this season, where would you say they should buy tickets in the stadium?
I think everybody's different. I know when I coached, there was a few fans that like to have tickets behind the bench, because I'm psychotic.
You want to listen?
they wanted to listen to me yell because it was they could get close. So like it all depends on what you're there for. Like where is the supporters? Do you want to get into that mess and that energy and that craziness? You got to know those songs. Like they don't want you in there if you're just there to kind of observe them. They don't want people watching. They want you to be a part of it. They feel as much of, and they should feel as much of the team and the win as the players do on the field. And that's what, for me, I was upset. How are you going to get snow in LA? We missed that LA game. I mean, that was going to be, they would have two great supporter groups. And they were just going to go back and forth. It was going to be intense. You're talking about the Rose Bowl. Who knows how many fans would have been in there? It would have been amazing. But that it all depends on the person there. Are you there with your daughter or your son and you want to watch the game and be able to talk and analyze it? Maybe behind the goal, maybe sometimes I get down deep into a corner because you can still see angles pretty well. It's just, for me, it's a little easier to see. And then every stadium is a little bit different of where you want to be. And I'm not a big fan of the Seattle stadium. As a player, I wasn't. And as a coach, I wasn't. I understand how it's built. It's built for volume and sound. It's for the football team. The turf has too many black pellets in it. So like it's a tough stadium for me as a player. And it was a tough stadium for me as a coach. Just, I didn't like the way it was set up. But that's, every stadium's a little bit different.
I like to sit kind of behind a goal to the left or right so you can see like play develop going either way and then it switches. But I agree. I mean, every stadium, prices of seats are different in different stadiums. The sun hits in a different way. So you have to be mindful of that, especially in the summer. So that's a good call. Let's head to South Beach. We have Phil Neville coaching Inter Miami. They get the 1-2-0 this weekend. There are some question marks on the roster. There's no number 10. There's no number 5. Those two numbers are available. Messi and Sergio Busquets contracts come up in the end of June. There's a lot of questions and speculation around, are they going to come to Inter Miami? Are they going to come to the MLS? Scotty, you are a huge fan of Phil Neville. You kind of touched on his thoughts in the playoffs and how it didn't come out until 4 games ahead of the season. How would Messi and Busquets fit in with a Neville regime?
I think if you get those two type of players, it's how do we fit in with their regime in a sense.
You think he would do that? You think he would?
I think that's the beauty of Phil Neville. So again, I'm going to date myself, but I watched Phil Neville play. I've grown up watching. I'm probably a little bit older than Phil Neville, but Phil Neville was a decent athlete. Nothing special, not the fastest, not the biggest, not the strongest, but he played at Man U as a left back or a right back, whichever they needed. He played in the midfield for Man U at times, even though their midfield was stellar. And then he goes to Everton and becomes their captain, and he becomes their center midfield captain. So we are talking about a highly intelligent soccer person. Not only that, he takes the women's English team and he kind of gets them rolling in the right direction and gets them on the move of. So he's also a total soccer person. He doesn't care if it's women, doesn't care if it's men. He'll coach anything. He just loves the game. And now he's in his second year in the MLS, with his friend Beckham, which is, I'm a Miami fan. I like the pink. I've said that before. But I'll tell you what, if St. Louis keeps doing what they're doing, I might start shifting one way, even though I don't like Budweiser. But I think Neville would do what's right to help his team win. You have a guy, Busquets, who can control the midfield. You have a Messi that anytime he touches the ball, we have a chance for a goal. I forget who said it. Somebody said it recently. If Messi comes to the MLS, it'll be the biggest signing of any sports figure in the United States ever. Well, again, 1975, I think it was, we brought Pele here. Most people don't know it, but Pele was the first $1 million athlete in the United States. Not a football player, not a basketball player. It was Pele, a soccer player. So it'd be maybe a tie, maybe even, but it would be huge. And it would be huge for the MLS. And I think Messi would look good in the pink. But I think Neville will make changing his style of play based on these two players. But again, he is now in his second year and he's got a grasp of what the MLS is all about. And I think we saw that. To me, even though I don't think Montreal was very good, but I thought Miami, from start to finish, I never thought that game was in doubt. I think they controlled the game the best of any game this weekend. I thought Nashville was the best game of soccer, but there was times where you could see the game going one way or another. I thought the Miami game, even though Montreal had some chances, I never thought Miami was in trouble. I never thought they were in doubt of winning that game. I thought they played the most efficient game of soccer on the weekend.
You mentioned it with
I think Neville would make his adjustments based on those two players. And I love watching Messi play, but I'm a huge Busquets fan. I love Busquets' game. He's one of my favorite players probably of all time.
the way that he controls the ball. You mentioned it with Portland, how they have a midfield who is good. They're solid. They can control a game. If they had Busquets in their midfield and Inter Miami, they would be smooth sailing. It doesn't even matter if Messi's on the field. Obviously, that would be huge. But I also think to mention with Busquets and like the development of youth soccer in America, even the collegiate level, if people here stateside are going to matches and seeing him play, they'll see why it's so important from a fundamental standpoint to learn that aspect of a game. And it'll just continue to push the game forward here in America.
I agree. I think a lot of times in America, I think because they wouldn't say it, but because some of our youth coaches aren't good coaches, they are taking athletes to hide their own coaching deficiencies, because a good athlete can hide some things on the field, especially at the youth level. Busquets, he is tall. He's not the fastest. He's a lanky player, but he's thinking, some players are thinking at 10 miles per hour. Busquets is thinking at 200 miles per hour. His mind is just so far ahead in advance. He's thinking 5, 6, 7 plays ahead, and which makes the game so much quicker to be played. And again, you bring them both in, you're getting lucky because they played so long together at Barcelona. But I would think that would be good for younger players and younger coaches to see, hey, we have to teach the mind as much as we're teaching the feet. We can't just do feet. And that's coming from a coach who runs a technical training. And we are constantly on our players. We have the feet, but we don't have the brain to go along with it. It's like, I have the nicest car in my driveway, but I don't have a driver's license. What's the point? You need to be a smart player to go along with your quality and technical ability. If you don't have the tactical aspect of the game, you're just a player out there. It's basically, I call him a 50-50 player. Sometimes you're good, sometimes you're bad.
The national teams, for the U.S. women's national team, the transition game, being a good athlete works for them. Lynn Williams is a huge example of that. The men's national team, obviously on a national stage, maybe not as successful. If we train players here stateside to develop faster in the mental side of the game, how much of that would you want to put into the national teams? How would you want to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it with the women's team? How would that help?
Well, we are still number one, but we are not as dominant as we were.
Right.
I mean, the Spanish team plays a wonderful brand of soccer. The French team plays a wonderful brand of soccer. So, like, we are not beating teams 8-0, 6-0, 7-0 anymore. We're squeaking by and we're losing. We lost 3 games in a row this past year. So it isn't that it's not broke, but without change, we can't become better. So we have to start developing at another style, another level, because other countries are putting money into their women's team, are having good coaches, do have great players. These players, Lucy Bronze comes over and she still to this day says a huge part of how good she is because she went to Carolina. And the fact that it was so competitive and they worked so hard that when she went back to England, she brought that with her. She brought that competitive drive and everything, which we have as Americans. Then she brings it back. They have the soccer knowledge. They're working. They're playing. It is their game. It's not our game yet. We have tons of players playing, but it's not really our game yet. Whereas what I mean by that is when I drive by the parks, people are playing basketball. People are playing baseball. They're not playing soccer. No one's playing pickup soccer. Whereas, shoot, Phil Foden gets out of his car. He's playing for Man City, and you can catch him on the street playing with his buddies, in a park in England somewhere. That they're constantly playing the game. I think it was Cruyff said, I train at Ajax an hour and a half a day. I play in the streets 3 hours a day. Where do you think I learned the game? Like, when that starts happening here, the players will pick up tactical and technical from each other. Here, if it's not a coaching session, if it's not an individual session, there are not a lot of kids doing things on their own. Whereas in Europe, that's all they know. They're always playing it. When they play basketball, it's to become better soccer players. When they play handball, it's to be better soccer players. When we play soccer, it's because that's the sport we picked. When I play basketball with my daughter, I'm thinking about soccer. It's just the way it is. I was a soccer person. I'm a soccer junkie. It's like I said, it's a religion. It's a lifestyle. It's who I am. I can't help it. I can't help but be part of the game and trying to learn. And as much as I think I know the game, every day I realize how much more I have to learn. And I think that's a big part of what we need to do in America. We are number one, girls. But if we don't start making some changes, we will not be number one for long.
I do remember when I left Next Level in the development of soccer, and we never played in a soccer game. When I was at Next Level, I never remember playing more than like a 3v3 small-sided thing. When I went to Penn State, girls were a lot bigger than me physically and maybe a little bit more athletic than me when it came to brute force. I don't think necessarily just running the length of a field, but it definitely was a big difference because they didn't have the soccer skill or the soccer knowledge, but they definitely had the ability to just go for it. And it was really important for us as a team to be strong. We worked lifted a lot, but it was also the athletic side was important. I'm not saying we didn't focus on the soccer side of the game, but definitely not as much as we did when I was in the Carolinas. So I think even from the perspective of the North and South, just players are developed differently. Girls, boys are built differently in different parts of the country. And this is my own theory, and it's what I've experienced. But I think if you could bring a little piece of both, it could make
agreed. And I think for me, that's part of my biggest problem in America is we have these athletes, but these younger coaches or young player coaches, they might not even be younger, but when you have a young player, we cannot allow someone just to, you scored 8 goals today because you're the fastest kid on the field. That's going to run out. That's not going to work the rest of your life. It ends at a certain age. We all that gap starts to close athletically. I might never become a better athlete than you, but because the only way I could play at the younger ages was technically and understanding the tactics, when that gap closes, I become 10 times better of a soccer player than you. We have these phenomenal athletes in America. We have these facilities. We have everything we need. We just need to do a better job of teaching a well-rounded game. And as far as the U.S., my big problem in the U.S., not really a problem, is when the Italians learn soccer, they learn the Italian way. When Spanish, we talk about it, tiki-tac. The Spains play a Spanish style. The girls play very similar to the men. Barcelona plays very similar to Barcelona's women. In America, Texans play like Texans. New Jersey kids play like New Jersey kids. Florida kids play Florida style. North Carolina play North Carolina. So when we bring a national team back together, we have all these different styles of play trying to meld into one. A couple of years ago, I said, why don't we just bring in one whole team? Now, let's just see for a tournament, and they're all California kids. Let's just see what happens. That doesn't mean they're the best of the best, but they're the best of the best in California. I would just like to see that experiment kind of transpire and see, because we're all playing these different styles. And last week we talked about Lindsay Oran. Well, she's been in France for a real long time, and you see it in her game. She's very French in her style of play. And the last game against Brazil, I think you can see how her style and Lavelle's style is a nice little fit and mixes real well together. The game is completely different when those two are on the field together.
The U.S. women's national team has 3 matches before the World Cup kicks off. 2 of those matches will be in April against Ireland. What do you want to see different in the starting 11 that we didn't see in She Believes?
Well, I'm feeling the MLS and everything. I hope people aren't getting the wrong vibe, but I'm feeling very feisty these days about soccer. I would have liked to seen it in the She Believes Cup. We played Brazil, Japan, and Canada. And the Canadian game, there was a lot going on in that. But we didn't know that going into the game. There have got to be players on our team that's a shoo-in. They're going. Haran, you're going to the World Cup. You're on this team. Don't get hurt. Lavelle, I don't need to see them in games. Of course, we want to win games. That's the thing. But there needs to be players like, I didn't see enough of Hatch. I don't know how you're making a judgment on this girl. Put her in the game. She needs to start. You need to start. Can they start? Are they good coming off the bench? Are they good at starting? Are they we're not testing the players enough, in my opinion, to see if they really belong or don't belong. I know it's a hard decision. I know Lato's he's got a lot on his plate. You're taking over a team that is so successful, but you got to make it yours. You got to make it yours. You got to own it. It's not Jill Ellis's team anymore. Do what you think is best. And we got to see certain players play. It was basically the same lineup all 3 games, unless there was a little injury, like where Lavelle played at the last game. But we already know what Lavelle can do. We know how effective she is. We know how dangerous she is. We need to see players that are going to help us, because The one good thing about the women's team is we are built for tournaments. We are built from tournaments. Like, I was surprised. We usually play Japan the third game, and they're completely exhausted, and we destroy them. To play them the second game, I thought that was good. Then we played Brazil, and Brazil looked tired. But they still broke us down at times. And like we talked about last week, I definitely need to see coffee because we do not control the tempo of the game. We don't control it. We win basically on counterattacks and mistakes. And I understand that's a way of playing, but I think we're too talented to just play like that. We need to – I want us to control the game. I want us to own and dominate the game. That's what we used to do. We don't do it anymore. Now we just play – they made a mistake here, they did this, and then we get a counterattack and we get a goal. We are good once we get up. We have a little bit of different ease on us. So that's what I'll be looking for. I'll be looking for – if Mal Swanson gets on the field, I'm going to lose my mind. She's the hottest player we have. We don't need to see her anymore.
Yeah.
We got it. You made it. You're good. Tell her, like, have them in camp. Have them there for training. Have them there to push. Have them there to, if I play somebody and they're terrible, then I'm going to sub them out and be like, look at what she's doing. If she can do it, you need to be able to do it. And if you can't do it, we got to find somebody else. So that's what I'm looking for is we need to know about the players we don't know about. I don't need to keep seeing the players we already know are going to be starting. Like, I hope we didn't win the She Believes Cup to lose the World Cup. That'll be a terrible thing. No one's going to remember that we won the She Believes Cup. They're going to remember that we won the World Cup. That's what we need to be playing for.
Everyone here knows that we're Sam Coffey stans. We think she should be on this national team. Will she be there for the matches in April? I don't know. But I think that we shouldn't play it safe. Just like you said, we should press forward. I think we should take Sullivan off the pitch, put an Ashley Sanchez in there with Rose Lavelle and Lindsay Horan. See what attacking-minded players do in the midfield. If we're going to play a four-back, we can trust Fox, Crystal Dunn, Becky Sauerbrunn, Alana Cook back there to maintain that back line, break down anything that comes through. Why don't we just make our midfield aggressive? There's nothing to lose. These games don't matter. They're friendlies. We're trying to see what happens. The Sanchez, a Lavelle, a Horan trio in the midfield could work, and something I would like to see that Vlatko does something different. And that's obviously if Sam Coffey isn't there. But even if she is there, let's be aggressive. Let's get forward. Let's get more players into the attack. I think Sanchez has such a unique style to her game that could complement Lavelle and Horan. We just don't know because we have never really seen it happen before. But let's not be so defensive minded.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different things we can do. And again, I really like Sanchez. I just think she needs to be on the field with certain players that complement her game. So, like, I could even see us playing a weird 5 midfield with her being the false 9 and having just 2 burners on the outside, basically. If you got to put Sophia Smith out there and Swanson out there, and then who goes through the middle? Because I think that worked really well. And I think it was more Lavelle just reading off of Morgan more than Morgan reading off of Lavelle. But Morgan came back against Brazil more into the midfield, and then Lavelle would get high and become our 9. And that's really hard for defenders to know, do we switch off? Do I go? Especially when you're talking about Morgan, who's scoring goals, and Lavelle, who you know is super dangerous. It's real hard to switch off if you're not completely organized. And I think was one of the big points that we used against Brazil is you could see their back line and that holding midfield was not real certain about who was supposed to take who, and it became dangerous at times, especially when Horan was on the ball playing balls through, and she does look for Lavelle an awful lot.
Correct. And Lavelle and Horan are good friends off the field, which definitely helps as well. Hatch, Sanchez, they play well together for the Washington Spirit. They have Rodman on the flank, and normally when the 3 of them on the field, they're really good together. So let's see that on a national stage. There are a lot of different things that I think Vlatko could switch up. Not that what he's doing is wrong, but why not? We're in a position where we have a few months before the World Cup. Let's mix things up. So we will see what happens in April. But staying on the topic of the NWSL, The Athletic reported that we can expect the official announcement of the return of Utah Royals in mid-March of this year. They were a team in 2018 to 2020, but they folded and moved to Kansas City after the former owner was outed by NWSL and MLS on racist behavior and toxic culture. So the name will stay the same, but it'll be a new team. Scotty, how do you think another addition, a team up north in the Midwest, I don't really know, I'm not a geography person, but up in Utah, how is that going to add and benefit this league?
I think the more teams, as long as it's quality run, is a good thing for a league. The better the competition, the more players get to be able to be into the league. We get to see different styles, different players. It's been my experience that Utah has a good soccer fan base. Real Salt Lake does well with their fan base. So I think it's going to be good. It's just going to cause a bit of a wrinkle because when these new teams come in, you have all these crazy drafts and crazy things that happen. So teams get kind of dismantled and then re-emerge as a completely new team somewhere else. So that's going to be a hard thing for players that have to move and go there, especially if they had a good season somewhere and finding new coaches. And so that's going to be tough. But as far as the league goes, I think that the more quality teams you can have in a league, the better it is for the players. We don't get bored going to play the same team over and over and over. And then as fan bases, we have something to look forward to coming in and go. And then when we go to other places too.
I think it's good to bring in another team too. I agree. I hope that the level of soccer stays high when you bring 30 more players into the league, that we have to continue to meet a standard. But I do think, like you said, there was a huge fan base in Utah. They have great facilities out there. They played the fall series back in 2020 when COVID hit out in Utah, and it worked out really well. So it'll be interesting to see how this helps. And there are obviously some speculation around the Bay Area adding a team, Boston adding a team. I know Nashville wants a team, and players specifically are pushing for that. I don't know when that would happen, but I think Nashville would be a great addition. We didn't really discuss a coach who could take over this Royals team, but one of the coaches that I would love to see back in the NWSL is Rhian Wilkinson. She stopped playing in Portland. Rather, she stopped being a coach in Portland after some controversy that the league allowed her to continue to coach, but she stepped down on her own. She is a phenomenal coach. She's easy to talk to, called a ton of Portland games last year. She knows the game well. She wants to develop these players. She was huge on Sophia Smith, getting her at a younger age so that she could develop into a player at this level, and especially the mindset that you were saying, Scotty, they want to see her kind of grow a little bit faster. I think she could help the youth game and help the league continue to grow. I know players like playing for her. What do you think about Wilkinson back in the NWSL?
Me personally, I don't have any problem with it. A good coach is a good coach. I think she handled her circumstance completely different than the problems that were going on in the NWSL. People fall in love. They fall in love. There's nothing they can really do about that. It kind of happens. I think the way they went about their business and handled it, I think they did a really good job with that. So yep. She is not in the same category of what these other coaches did. Not in the least. So this is a person who was in it for the game, was in it for the players. And you'll know as a player yourself, I don't like to use the term players coach, but a players coach is super important. When I was a coach, I felt that I was a players coach, and maybe too much at a fault. I still maybe felt I was still a player. I just remember when I was a player, and it's a players coach to me is a coach that's more concerned about his players benefiting than he is from himself or herself. And I think that's what Wilkinson was. She won a championship. Of course, she wanted to win a championship, but I think she was more proud of those players than of herself winning the championship. And that's the type of coaches that we need in the game. A coach that wants to develop players, wants to develop a style of play, help the game, make it grow, and is more concerned about that than getting their name in the paper. So I don't see any problem with her coming back into the league and being a coach there.
Wilkinson in her first season too led Portland to a national championship. And at the beginning of the year, she was huge because when Parkinson was there, he had his principles, he had the way that he did things. And you could tell like that crowd really fell into line with what Parkinson wanted. And she was huge on, this is my team now, we'll do what I want to do. And players really respected that and really grew into that. But that's definitely a fine line that you play. You come in as a coach and you're like, this is my team now, this is what you do. But she handled it at such a good rate. She knew it was a long season, so she didn't implement everything at once. She slowly put in. Wilkinson also had the benefit of having Sophia Smith, Crystal Dunn, etc. on her roster. But I think she just makes this league better players respected and enjoyed playing for her. I like the way she coaches and understands the game really well. So she can only benefit this league. And Utah's not far from Portland. I don't know if, and Utah's kind of close to Canada too. She's Canadian. Maybe she wants to stay up north, enjoy the cold weather, but I think she would be a huge piece to really any team. But Utah doesn't have a coach yet, as far as we know.
As far as we know.
As far as we know. Exactly. That's the key point there.
Yeah.
All right, Scotty, to wrap the show up, what's been your favorite thing you saw on, off the field, on Instagram? I know you're a huge Pinterest person. What did you see that you liked?
This week, I really just was into the game. So like I said, I'm huge into music. I finally, my life slowed down a little bit. I got my microphone stand, so might start busting out some lyrics here every once in a while. I feel like I should be rapping. But I really enjoyed the Johnny Cash Nashville. Yeah, I really enjoyed the Nashville game. It was something about it. My wife just went to Nashville, and I've never been, but she said I would love it there. It's just the vibe, the food scene, the music scene. It reminds me of how she was describing it as Portland. They like to be Portland, Austin, Texas. We are who we are. We make no excuses for it. We want to be who we want to be, and we want to be weird. We want to be crazy. We want to do our things. So that the Nashville game was really exciting for me to watch, and just the way that the fan base showed up and went kind of crazy for that game. And those uniforms were sweet. And anything with Johnny Cash, I'm in for it.
Are you a Johnny Cash fan?
I am a music fan, and I do love Johnny Cash. I'm a Liverpool fan, and You'll Never Walk Alone. He has the best version of that song I've ever heard. I think someday they should play it in Liverpool in the stands, because we're terrible right now. We need something to lift us up. I will say this, though, after watching the MLS, and I've always watched the MLS, and I'm going to be really into it this year and really watching it and really dissecting it. But I also know that I have to speak what I feel about the game. And I have some friends that think I'm down on U.S. soccer. I'm not necessarily down on it. I just think we're underachieving at an alarming rate. That's what I'm down on. I see some really good, talented, young players all the time. And then you see them 4 years later, and they're nothing what they could have been or should have been. And that's just because of lack of coaching. There's a coach locally here that has he didn't tell me, he told another coach that I know, that you cannot tell a young player that they're gifted because they're so young. And I totally disagree with that. If there's a player that's gifted and talented and special, that player needs to know it. And then we need to help that player achieve the greatness that is there for him. And I don't think you're going to burn a player out if they're truly in love with the game, but they have to be challenged. We can't grow without pain. I think that's a huge part of the game. Everybody wants things to be so easy. The best players go through the hardest times, the roughest times, and then they keep battling, keep fighting, and come out of it and become these super players. Messi did not have hard times. He's had a lot of hard times, but that's what makes the greatness so much more exhilarating for him, to know what he worked through, to what he went through, and where he ends up now and what he's become. So I know that when I do the stuff, I want to talk the truth and speak the truth and speak it with passion and heart. So on my sneakers today, I went with, hold on, let me get the camera angle for us.
Let's get us right in the middle. Okay.
I went with the Nike Air One trainers, which are made famous by John McEnroe. So I'm going to try to become almost the John McEnroe of soccer. I'm going to speak what I feel is the truth, whether you like to hear it or not. So that was my reasoning for my shoes today.
I'm here for it. Tell us all the truth. Don't hold back, Scotty. I know that you never will, but I don't have a filter. Continue to encourage you, because I want to hear it. I know our fans of the show want to hear it, because that's how we get better, right? Without mistakes and without continuing to push the limit. I will say, I think you made a mistake today. I could be wrong. Are you wearing an Adidas hat with Nike shoes?
I am not. I'm wearing an ASG Nike hat.
Okay.
I'm not wearing Adidas. It looks like an Adidas logo. It's the
Take
ASG.
Get closer. Oh, okay. Kind of looked like Adidas from afar. So I'm glad you didn't.
I'm sneaky.
Didn't break your own rules.
Never. It'll never happen. I'll never cross brand.
Okay. I'm going to hold you to it every show.
No worries.
My favorite thing of the week. I shouldn't say of the week. So my favorite bookstore. That's the thing that I've tried to improve on the past 2 years. I think I've gotten like 30% better. I'm getting better at reading, but I was in upstate New York for Christmas, and they have one of my favorite bookstores. In the sports section, they always have really unique books that you like typically don't see in the sports section. And this, it's on my studio. So for those who are listening, it's behind me. You should watch us on YouTube. But Diego Maradona's The Last Interview and Conversations. I have not read it yet. So if there's anyone who's listening, or Scotty, you've read it, can let
I
me
have
know
not
on
read
it.
it, but I will say this.
Yeah.
After this weekend, there was some plays in the MLS game that made me upset. And when that happens, I have to go back to vintage soccer, and all I did was watch Diego highlights.
What specifically about his game?
Say again?
What specifically about his game did you have to go back and watch?
Just his skill, just the stuff he did. I mean, he was just his balance, his ability, left-footed, just like I said, like these players need to realize that we're there to be entertained.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not a big Will Smith or Tom Cruise fan as far as what they're about as people. But if they make a movie, I'm going because they're entertaining. Their movies are amazing. So when I go to a soccer game, if I paid money, I want to leave there entertained. I want to like the games were exciting and exhilarating, but not every game entertained me in the sense of, wow, that was special. Like there was mistakes in this. But when I watched Diego, he knew he was playing, and not to be famous. He was playing because of his love for the game. Like he owed it to the game. He owed it to every fan that showed up. It was just, if you haven't seen Diego play, go watch him play. And then if you haven't seen, he has a highlight of him juggling before a Napoli game, and it's to music in the stands. It's one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life. Just how slick he is on the ball and his rhythm and his just interpretation of the music he was listening to and how he played the game. And when I watch him, I never knew what the song was in his head, but I knew there was something. He was dancing out there. He was doing his game based on something that was internally driving him. And I don't think enough players do that nowadays. And that doesn't mean, listen, I was a hard-nosed tackler. And one of the best quotes I've ever heard, I think it was Gattuso from Italy, said, to me, a soccer player is between an artist and a warrior. They sit right in between an artist and a warrior. And I thought my game was very similar to his, as far as part of my artistry was the tackling, was the getting the crowd into it, not from a goal, from a tackle, getting my team to be a little bit different energy because of something I did defensively as much as offensively. So when I watch players, I like to see a player that has a different rhythm to them, that they're doing it for a different reason. And Diego was one of those guys for me.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I will definitely have to read this book sooner rather than later. I like the piece of like the passion side of it, right? Like he brought in different aspects of his life to impact his game. And maybe sometimes players like to compartmentalize their life. But I think in soccer specifically, because you can be so creative, why not bring it all in and let that like live on your, what's the saying? Live on your heart on your sleeve, wear your heart on your sleeve.
Wear your heart on your sleeve. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think the players that do that end up being the ones that we aspire to be or aspire to watch. They inspire us.
Totally. Completely agree. We hope to see that this season. Maybe we'll have a breakout star in MLS where we will be inspired by. We will stay on top of all of the latest news, MLS and NWSL. That is it for this show, everyone. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at SFTP Pod. Scotty, another great week. Thanks for joining me again, and we'll see you guys next Wednesday.
Have a great week.